Among those nations like my own that hold nuclear stockpiles, we must have the courage to escape the logic of fear and pursue a world without them. We may not realize this goal in my lifetime, but persistent effort can roll back the possibility of catastrophe. Quote from Barack Obama. I affirm the United States federal government should establish a foreign policy significantly limiting the use of weapons of mass destruction. Terms you'll need to know throughout my presentation include nuclear bombs, which are explosive devices that derive its power from nuclear reactions. Nuclear arsenals, which is the stockpile of nuclear weapons in each country. TNT, which is a yellow crystalline material used as a high explosive. I'll be using it to describe the power of nuclear weapons. Weapons of mass destruction, a nuclear device intended on harming a large population. Nuclear proliferation, which is the spread of nuclear weapons, knowledge, and information to countries that do not yet possess nuclear arsenals. And finally, fissile material, which is the material capable of sustaining a nuclear chain reaction. So it's the material needed to actually develop the weapons. If the nuclear weapons states join together to pursue the United Nations Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons through the regulation from the International Atomic Energy Agency, not only will the world's stockpile be decreased, but trillions of federal US dollars can be saved, thus allowing for a safer world and a more plentiful country. The increased advancements of nuclear weapons pose immense threats to world population, environmental health, and the future of the world as we know it. A singular nuclear weapon can destroy an entire highly populated city with the blink of an eye. There are 3,720 warheads deployed with operational forces between just the US, Russia, and France in 2020. And of these warheads, 1,800 of them are on high alert and can be used at a moment's notice, according to Jay Bennett. The current total amount of nuclear weapons deployed in Stockton 2020 worldwide sits around 13,410. This is a large drop-off from the 70,300 that were present in 1987 during the Cold War, but the fear happens to be higher than ever due to the advancements of these weapons. In World War II, the US dropped 2 bombs on Japan, Little Boy and Fat Boy. Focusing on Fat Boy, the more powerful of the 2 bombs, an estimated 21,000 tons of TNT was produced after impact, according to Jay Bennett. Considering this bomb destroyed an entire city almost instantly and caused catastrophes far after the explosion, it's hard to imagine a weapon much more powerful. Compare the power of Fat Boy to the B-83 bomb developed most recently by the United States. The B-83 bomb has the capability to produce 1,200,000 tons of TNT upon detonation, making it 57 times more powerful than Fat Boy, according to Jay Bennett. The catastrophes that would occur if this bomb were to actually go off would go beyond immediate casualties. Impacts from nuclear fallout include a potential for a nuclear winter, which occurs when the smoke from an explosion blocks out the sun and sends that area essentially into an ice age, destroying all crops and destroying most of all life. This can make the area inhospitable for up to and often past 20,000 years, according to Dr. Mary Dowd. The US federal government must continue to limit and reduce the amount of nuclear weapons present in each country's stockpile. The combination of quantity and the advancements in quality increases the chance for worldwide destruction by the day. By having large amounts of advanced nuclear weapons, there becomes increased potential for a nuclear fallout. In order to guarantee safety from a potential nuclear conflict, there must be continued pursuit to limit the advancements and production of nuclear weapons. The US does not modernize their weapons without consequence, as the cost of maintaining and advancing their nuclear arsenals tops almost all federal expenses. The US has and continues to spend trillions of dollars on nuclear weapon development and research, preventing funding towards other needed federal expenses. As documented by the Office of Management and Budget, the US spending on nuclear weapon ranks at number 3 all-time compared to all other federal expenses. From the years 1940 to 1996, the peak of the nuclear development era, the US has spent more than $5.5 trillion adjusted for inflation on nuclear weapons. During that 56-year period, the US succeeded to combine total federal spending for education, training, employment, social science, space travel, technology, and disaster relief, amounting to over $98 billion per year on nuclear weapons development spending. Although the nuclear arsenal has been significantly decreased since that time during the Cold War, the US continues to spend billions on weapons development to this day. In 2019, the US spent $35.4 billion on nuclear weapons, leading all countries in that category, according to ICANN. We spent 3 times the amount of that of the second leading country, which was China, who spent $10.4 billion. The US needs to adjust their spending on nuclear arsenals so that we may instead focus our attention and money on other federal expenses, specifically health, education, and disaster relief. These harms caused by nuclear development prove to be issues from both a structural and attitudinal standpoint. Structurally, funds are being focused towards weapons of mass destruction development, and stockpile stewardship rather than the other needed federal applications. Attitudinally, countries continue to fear one another and their nuclear capabilities, which causes them to develop weapons in accordance to their adversaries. Throughout the nuclear era, it has been general wisdom that the production of countries' nuclear arsenals leads to the other countries to follow suit. This is known as nuclear proliferation, and according to an article written by Zachary Keck, the main cause of proliferation in the 21st century is the disparity in conventional military power. It is a fear that between smaller countries, if they do not pursue the nuclear arsenals that some of these other countries do, their safety will be in jeopardy due to lack of conventional powers compared to other higher power countries. If a country possesses immense military strength, then countries with a smaller military presence will most likely be influenced to conduct nuclear development. When considering money once again, it becomes obvious that large countries are influenced to develop more nuclear arsenals so that they may retain superiority over smaller countries and maintain par with the higher countries. The US alone plans on spending $1.7 trillion over the next few decades since starting in 2020 in order to maintain and replace their nuclear arsenals, according to William Perry and James Cartwright. The US currently possesses the most nuclear weapons out of every nuclear state in the world, and still plans on upgrading and replacing the current nuclear arsenal with a brand new one by 2032. Let's say, for example, the US were to cancel just one branch of their nuclear plan going forward, specifically removing the plans for all cruise missile applications. If we were to cancel the anticipated nuclear cruise missile program, an estimated $30 billion could be saved, which could be then distributed to other needed federal expenses. If we do not change our structural and attitudinal focuses towards nuclear development, the nuclear proliferation will continue at a high rate, and other federal expenses will continue to be ignored as trillions of dollars will be thrown down the drain towards nuclear weapons development. If the world were to genuinely attempt to make a difference regarding weapons of mass destruction, then we must come together to enforce the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Treaty through the practices and investigations of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The IAEA, or the International Atomic Energy Agency, is responsible for enforcing a safeguard system to verify compliance with the NPT, or the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Treaty, through a series of inspections between each nuclear state. The treaty itself promotes cooperation towards peaceful nuclear technology for all states, while the safeguards enforced by the IAEA prevents the distribution and spread of fissile material for weapon use. The agency will enforce the regulations set forth by the NPT by examining the use of fissile material between nuclear states through continuous investigations, surveillance footage, and unintended monitoring systems. If extensive fissile material is used, then consequences consisting of denying the violators any further research, both peaceful or not, will be enforced. The IAEA will receive funds for their investigation through their regular budget, the United Nations budget, and technical cooperation and extra-purgatory program funds. The 2021 regular budget for the IAEA is listed at $800.5 million, while the United Nations budget is listed at about $3 billion. Although the main source of funding comes from the IAEA's regular budget, they receive funds from other member states through the Technical Cooperation Fund and the Extraburgatory Program Fund. The first advance that comes from supporting the IAEA regards their ability to limit a nuclear fallout, the most essential point of limiting nuclear weapons. The amount of nukes present in the world today could destroy the planet more than 10 times over. If we were to achieve the goal of lowering the world's nuclear stockpiles and halting further nuclear weapon advancements, then we must pursue stricter regulations towards nuclear development by funding, supporting, and believing in the actions of the IAEA. By having the IAEA force nuclear states to have smaller arsenals, and by having them regulate current advancements, there is potential to have further safety assured for the world as a whole. Without the IAEA investigations, or if the current staff of the IAEA are not improved in terms of quantity, there will be nothing limiting nuclear development and advancements, which could lead to a worldwide destruction. The second advantage includes the scenario in which the IAEA receives permission to employ added regulations through the modified NPT. If the NPT receives agreed upon altercations from the 191 signed states to allow the IAEA to conduct added regulations regarding nuclear development, the $1.7 trillion that originally was prescribed to nuclear development for the United States would be significantly lowered. In order to spend less money on our nuclear development, the IAEA must regulate the actions of all other nuclear states so the US will not feel pressured to meet the capabilities of our enemies. It is 100% necessary to maintain par with our opposition to ensure the safety of our country. So if the goal is to lower nuclear development budget, the IAEA must pursue the rules set forth by the NPT so that the entire world limits their arsenals simultaneously. Regulation through the IAEA is the only way to maintain the safety of the US while also limiting nuclear development budget. If a worldwide agreement is not met to lower the amount of nuclear weapons present through the IAEA, it will be impossible to lower federal spending on our nuclear arsenal. Due to issues regarding our country's safety, the US needs to remain at the top to ensure the safety for our nation. By having the IAEA force the issue on nuclear development limitations, the US could save billions of dollars, allowing for a better distribution towards other needed federal expenses. I affirm the United States federal government should establish a foreign policy significantly limiting the use of weapons of mass destruction. I affirm this statement because of the expenses revolved around nuclear development, as well as the risk of worldwide destruction if a nuclear war were to occur. The threat of nuclear warfare is too large to ignore any further. The US alone has spent trillions of dollars on weapons of mass destruction, resulting in absent funds for higher priority federal expenses. When considering the proliferation effect that has plagued the world for decades now, if countries continue to advance their nuclear stockpiles, nuclear warfare resulting in worldwide destruction becomes nearly inevitable. If we increased regulations for the NPT and give the IAEA added funds and authority, nuclear arsenals could be lowered, resulting in a decline of nuclear development spending. If you do not believe it's possible, just listen to the words from current presidential-elect Joe Biden. As president, I will restore American leadership on arms control and non-proliferation as a central pillar of the US global leadership. I will work to bring us closer to a world without nuclear weapons so that the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are never repeated. Thank you.